The Stono Rebellion, America's forgotten battle for freedom. On a humid Sunday morning in 1739, along the banks of South Carolina's Stono River, a group of enslaved Africans seized their fate. Armed with stolen muskets and machetes, they raised a banner, beat drums and marched south toward freedom in Spanish Florida. Along the way they burned plantations, killed about 24 white colonists, and recruited fellow bondsmen. Their leader, a man remembered as Jemmy, or sometimes Cato, was not merely rebelling against bondage. He and his comrades were striking a blow in the long, unfinished struggle for black liberation in America. This uprising, known as the Stono Rebellion, remains the largest slave revolt on mainland British North America before the Revolution. It terrified white colonists, who, outnumbered by the very people they enslaved, had long feared such an eruption, and though the rebellion was brutally crushed, dozens killed in battle, others hunted down and executed, the shockwaves it created reshaped slavery in the colonies. Why the rebellion happened? The rebellion was born of both despair and hope. South Carolina's plantation system was infamous for its brutality. Rice cultivation demanded backbreaking labor in disease-ridden swamps, and mortality among enslaved Africans was staggering. Yet these men and women were not helpless victims. Many were from the Kingdom of Congo, where they had known Catholicism, military training, and shared language, giving them a cultural cohesion rare among enslaved populations. They also had a destination, Spanish Florida, where the Crown promised asylum to those who escaped slavery. In other words, the march toward St. Augustine was not random violence. It was a deliberate attempt at freedom, rooted in both African traditions and global politics. The white response. The rebellion's suppression was swift and merciless, but its legacy was even harsher. In 1740, the South Carolina legislature passed the Negro Act, one of the most draconian slave codes in American history. Enslaved Africans were forbidden from assembling, earning money, growing food, or learning to read. White militias were strengthened. The colony even attempted to curb the importation of Africans from Congo, fearing the arrival of more rebels. Rather than reckoning with the causes of rebellion, the inhumanity of slavery, colonial leaders doubled down on control. This pattern would echo across American history. Every time black resistance rose, so too did white repression. What it means today. Why should the Stono Rebellion matter nearly 3 centuries later? Because it reminds us that American freedom has always been contested terrain. Too often the nation tells its story as if liberty was a gift bestowed by enlightened founders in 1776. The truth is that enslaved Africans were already fighting, bleeding, dying, for freedom decades before Jefferson penned the Declaration. The rebellion also exposes a legacy of fear that still lingers. Just as colonial authorities responded to black defiance with tighter laws, today we see echoes in voter suppression efforts, over-policing of black communities, and political panic at black-led movements for justice. The instinct to control rather than confront inequality is part of America's oldest reflex. Remembering Stono. The men and women who rose up at Stono were not reckless insurgents. They were freedom fighters. Their march was cut short, their lives brutally taken, but their story survives as a testament to resilience. They remind us that America's promise of liberty was never universal, and that progress has always come because people on the margins dared to demand more. The Stono Rebellion is not just a footnote in colonial history, it is part of the foundation of America's long, unfinished struggle with race, power, and freedom. To remember Stono is to recognize that the fight for equality did not begin in Selma or with abolitionists. It began in the fields and swamps where enslaved Africans risked everything to claim what this nation still struggles to guarantee: true freedom.